Hello, I am Suzanne Roth, Directress General of the Society of Daughters of Holland Dames. It's a pleasure to welcome you to this second in a series of live webinars for our members and associates across the country. By next week, this webinar will be posted on the activities section of our website for all to enjoy. Special thanks and appreciation to our patroness, Mary Ray Casper, for hosting this webinar. And now I will turn it over to Mary Ray, our host. Take it away, Mary Ray.
Thank you, Suzanne. The Society of Daughters of Holland Dames' mission is to perpetuate the memory of the Dutch ancestors of its members and to encourage excellence in historical research relating to the Dutch in America. We do this in a variety of ways, including with an active grants program. One of our recent grant recipients is the New Amsterdam History Center's exciting online project, Mapping Early New York. In January 2020, the board of the Holland Dames voted to give the New Amsterdam History Center a grant of $7,500 for phase 1 of the Mapping Early New York project. In November 2020, we awarded $15,000 for phase 2. In June 2021, the board offered the New Amsterdam History Center a 4-to-1 matching challenge grant of $12,000 for phase 3 of this project. It is an honor to present Toya Dubin, project manager of the Mapping Early New York project, a detailed encyclopedia of Dutch colonial history linked to the maps of the Costello Plan, the earliest map of New Amsterdam. Ms. Dubin is a volunteer and member of the Board of Trustees for the New Amsterdam History Center and president of Hudson Archival, which is responsible for the digitization of the Dutch documents collection at the New York State Archives. Today's presentation highlights the ongoing progress of this project, a project with which Toya has been involved since 2004. At the end of the presentation today, we will be using the question and answer function found at the bottom of your screen for any questions that you may have. Please welcome Toya Dubin to today's Holland Dames webinar.
Thank you so much, Mary Ray. And I want to say so many thanks to the Society of the Daughters of Holland Dames for providing funding for this project and for allowing the New Amsterdam History Center to begin to realize all of our ideas about how it could finally grow into something that's very, very useful. The Mapping Early New York project has been more than 10 years in the making, and I want to give thanks to some very special dames, specifically Suzanne Roth for helping believe in this project and explaining it to the board in a way that helped us get funding, to Susan Bryden, the chair of the grants committee, for promoting our project to the committee, to Firth Favend. So many of the encyclopedia entries that you will see either have been wholly written by her or partially written by her, and she continues to write encyclopedia entries with me, actually daily. Yesterday we worked on 3 of them together, which was really fun. I also want to thank Elbrun Kimmelman for her enthusiastic support when I really needed it. My thanks also go to Esme Berg, our executive director, for her miraculous stamina in a decade's worth of work together, and to Nitin Gadia, the wonderful programmer whose beautiful work on the mapping project you are about to see. So with all of that said, I'm going to share my screen with you so that you can see what the mapping project looks like. And here we go. So we're going to start by orienting you in the screen a little bit. This is the New Amsterdam History Center's main website. And here you will see the Mapping Early New York project. If I click on this, it takes us right to the mapping project. And we have this wonderful slider that allows you to see the city of Manhattan overlaid with a version of the Castello plan. But we also have got an about page that shows that the Society of Daughters of Holland Dames has been a wonderful donor to the project, along with Ken Chase and the Society of the First Families in New York. This button takes you to the encyclopedia. We'll look at that a little bit more in a moment, but you can literally switch back and forth from the encyclopedia to the mapping back and forth as much as you wish. Over here on the left-hand side, we can choose what map layers we wish to see and what map overlays we would like to see. So let's try the original Castello plan on for size. Here it is. And you'll see this little green dot. This is our demo lot, tax lot C7, based on the Stokes designation of what those tax lots were called. You can also choose to look at the Dutch grants map if you prefer, overlaid. The Legend of New Amsterdam, current satellite all the way on both sides if you prefer, or this 1913 version that we've been using quite frequently and is our default, along with the Stokes key. So that might be a little easier for some of you because it gives you the letters and numbers for each of the blocks, lots, houses, etc. Up here, you can overlay things like the Dutch grants boundaries, information, and lines. And when you do that, as you hover over, it will tell you who that Dutch grant lot was originally given in patent to. So in this case, you can see it's Dutch grant lot A14 and it's Paulus Leanderson van der Grift. Down here, it's Thomas Sanderson at C9. And here in lot C7, which is our sort of example lot, Isaac Allerton and Govert Lockermans had the Dutch grant lot C7 at this time. There is a time slider here at the bottom, and you can see that as you slide the time slider, the patents and grants appear or disappear. Super fun to play with that. And you'll also see our little dot here for tax lot C7 changes color as different ownership takes place in that particular lot. This lot was our main example where we wanted to show a demonstration of how the grant lots were divided and subdivided. So at some point you end up with a large grant lot, and then it gets divided up into two. And as your time slider moves along and the other grant lots come along, now we see it's been further subdivided, and transactions have brought it to Dirk Schmidt and Gijsbert van Embroek and Thomas Frensen and Samuel Edsel. So eventually, it is our hope that we can trace every single real estate transaction in each of these grant lots through time, from 1624 all the way through 1664, and hopefully past then. But for the moment, we're focusing on that time period because it's a lot to accomplish just even in that time period. Equally fun to look at is the current lots, which you can also layer over. So this is the modern day lots that we are currently living in, and you can see their addresses and how they overlaid with the original Dutch grant lots. So this is 61 Broadway, and the owner is our RXR 61 Broadway LLC. And here's 55 Broadway with 55 Broadway Associates. and so on. In modern times, obviously, the ownership is maybe not quite as interesting, right? Because everyone has an LLC just based on the address, where back in the Dutch colonial period, the addresses were based on the people. But still, it's very fun to see how they overlay with the original Dutch period. And that is particularly helpful. We can also layer in the current buildings, and let's look at this over the Castello plan if you wish. Now you can see the Castello plan, and if you see a current building, you can also see the Dutch grant lot at that time. They're very similar, and you can layer back and forth and actually zoom in here and look at that building and how it laid over what was originally a Dutch grant lot and became a house with a little garden behind it. So quite a fun change to see in the island of Manhattan over that time. So this is, and again, this time slider, as you can see, as I move it back and forth, you can see all of these changes occur. The Dutch grants go away or come back in. We intend to do more work with the visual graphics on this to make it even more interesting over time. But for now, this is where we stand. There's also information buttons that allow you to turn on or off the information layer. And if you click on any of the little I for information, you'll see a description of what's in that layer and what it will or won't do for you if you choose to have that layer displayed. You can choose to have pretty much any combination of layers displayed. If I turn these off, you'll see them start to disappear. I can get rid of the lines. I can get rid of the information. You get to choose pretty much what view is most interesting for you, given the type of research that you personally may be doing. All right. Hopefully I'm not going too fast. I always get a little nervous with presentations, so I'll do my best to go back. And please know that at the end of the presentation, we're going to leave as much time as possible for questions. So I'm going to click on this encyclopedia button, which is one of the ways to get to the encyclopedia, right? And you can see right here in the encyclopedia, there's a map button that brings me right back home to the map. I also want to show you that if I click on this Dutch grant, interesting, look, here's some information from the encyclopedia that has populated, and you'll see there's a link that I can click, and it'll take me right into the encyclopedia for that particular grant lot. So I don't have to sort of find my way around in the encyclopedia. If I go back to the map, I can again, I'll do that one more time for you. I'm also going to show you the Castello plan tax lots are all these little red dots, right? And you can see based on 1660 who was living there. If I click on one of them, I can scroll down and see the Dutch grant lot and also the Castello plan tax lot. And I can pop right into the exact place in the encyclopedia where that tax lot is discussed. Great. Now that we're in the encyclopedia, let's talk about that a little bit. So this is the home screen. If I click on home here, you'll see this lovely map, and you'll be able to see where you can search all content. If you're just trying to search on a particular word, like you might wish to learn about Indian deeds, you can search on that word and get information. And you'll see that the results here show you we have 31 entries out of 7,000 current entries that relate to Indian deeds in that in this particular search result. If you like the first result, you can click into it. You can also see a little snippet of context here so that if you're scrolling through your research, you can kind of figure out whether or not this is actually which of the deeds you're looking for, or which person or which land mass you might be looking for. We also have here in this content list tax lots, the Dutch grants lots, male and female ancestors and their marriages, occupations, and so on. So we're going to start by looking at learning about people, right? Because I always think that's part of one of the most interesting things about what we're doing here. So I'm going to search on Govert, and let's see who we find. My favorite, Govert Lockermans. You can see in this case in the entry, we've used a portrait that we thought might be appropriate for what he might have looked at, but we've made a big point of letting you know that's a placeholder. This is not actually a portrait. And he has an ID number, and you can see he's been used for several user tags. We know his birth location. If you wish to see this, you can find out more in Wikipedia and click right into the map for it. I can click back on that. I can see, oh goodness, he was a brewer. What is a brewer? I can look at this occupation and learn a little bit about a brewer. And then I can see that he arrived in 1633 on the St. Martin. Well, here is that ship journey. And it seems that he and Everardus Bogardus also arrived on that ship journey. And then his marriages to Arianchi and Marici Jans. Please forgive my very poor pronunciation of Dutch. I'm sorry in advance. And in both of these cases, of course, we have entries for each of these women, which is really exciting. There are very few projects in which you can essentially give a voice to women, Native Americans, enslaved peoples. All of them are represented here within the encyclopedia. Anytime you see a blue link, you can click in and see what we know about that person. Most fun of all, though, for Govert and for all of the entries here, is that you can click on this open timeline button. And what it will do is bring up everything we have in the database about that entry or person and put it in chronological order. What's exciting about that is that it essentially allows you to see the trajectory of someone's life. Here's Govert's birth date, his arrival date, his first marriage date, and then there are documents including a bond for goods brought over on a ship, a bill of sale for another smaller ship, a bill of sale for a house, power of attorney, land patents, all kinds of things that tell you about what was happening in Govert's life. And you can see this is 1643, 1644. He had a lot going on. So it's kind of exciting. This is this tax lot that he occupied that was the brewer's house. And I'm going to click into that very briefly so that you can see we actually even have a modeling of what that house might have looked like done by Len Tentillo. So that's kind of exciting. And if I go back to Govert's timeline and scroll all the way through, you can see how many entries we have on this person. A lot. And we're not even done ingesting all of the collections yet. So there are, after that, here's his death date. And right under here, you can see no date. We have a lot of entries that for whatever reason simply don't have a date. We don't know when his either one of his wives were born. So we can't include those in his timeline. Or we might not have a date for a particular tax lot event. So we're gonna not guess. We just leave it as no date until we can resolve that. As soon as we resolve a date, it pops right into the timeline. Okay, so what's really fun, it's really fun to see some of the women, and in particular, we're going to look at, you can search on a name here and find the person you're looking for. You can search on an occupation or a birthplace to find. So if you're searching on your ancestry, this is a great place to do it. Here's Catalina Trico, very famous woman who married George or Joris Rapalji and had was the mom of Sarah Rapalji, the first child born in the Dutch settlement. And then if you open Catalina's timeline, very interestingly, you will see some of the documents in the Dutch documents that she is related to. I found this one in particular fascinating. This is a declaration from Catalina and her daughter as to the conduct of the midwife, who they felt had just not provided good service to one of the young women in the colony who was pregnant and not feeling well. I found that fascinating to see these two women, mom and daughter, looking out for another woman in the colony and saying, you know, a midwife is a really important person in this colony, and giving birth is a dangerous thing, and pregnancy is really important to the survival of the colony. And we really want to make sure that people get good service from the company midwife. Very interesting. I'm going to go now to show you a little bit about, if you search content here for the word manumission, in a very interesting way, you'll get to see that there are manumission documents for all kinds of slaves of the Dutch West India Company. And what is wonderful about this is that you can see that we have been able to build ancestor entries for many of these people. They are no longer just slaves of the Dutch West India Company. They are people. And I'm fascinated by that, by the level of record keeping that is available about them. In fact, you can see things like Domingo Angola and is petitioning for the manumission of this gal Christina, who was the orphan daughter of two friends of his. And so in this one document, 1, 2, 3, 4 people came to life, and we were able to make entries about them. And we are hoping to be able to research and expand those entries. So we're also beginning to include some of the Native Americans in great detail, or as much detail as we can find. Specifically, if I look at in occupations, I've also begun including a chief, because there were so many chiefs of the Native American tribes. And you can see here how many chiefs I've been able to include recently. Sese, Regwak, I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce some of these. I'm not very good at it. Sapinto. But what's wonderful about that is that we can see this Native American chief. And if I open the timeline, I will be able to see the document, the specific Indian deed that he is associated with. And that, in fact, involves a tract of land on Long Island in a specific location. At some point, I will be able to identify all of the tribes related to that also. So you can see that in the entities, not entity roles. I've started listing tribes, and like the Siawano Nation, indigenous inhabitants of the Bronx and Westchester County. So many of these tribes, we learn about the Algonquins and the Iroquois, but maybe the Lenape, but we don't learn about this vast number of tribes that were involved in their dealings with the Dutch West India Company. So every time we make another entry about this, we're starting to fill in the blanks. And create an interesting idea for you to search about or learn about. We also, you can see the very diverse nature of the colony when you learn about someone like Anthony Van Sally. Very recently, we were contacted by a writer who was working on an article about Van Sally, who was known as the Turk, and quite famously had read a Quran daily, and came originally from Cartagena, Spain. If I open his timeline, you'll see that there are 40 entries relating to him. He's all over the Dutch colonial documents. That's super exciting. And we were able to help this author with writing an article about his life. And because all of this flows in chronological order, it's easy to see what happened in his life, and you'll be able to read all of these. So I encourage each and every one of you to come in and take a look at all of this. You can also learn about places and things like ships and ship journeys. So for example, in the ships, the King David is a very frequently mentioned ship. And if I click on its timeline, I can see all kinds of documents that related to the King David. There is a wonderful database at the New Netherland Institute that tracks some of the ship journeys. We have only a few of them in here. Eventually, we hope to have many more of them. But we also, in many of these ship journeys, do manage to track who comes over on which ship. So here's the King David, and you can see there were immigrants to New Netherland, including, here's Govert Lockermans, the brother-in-law of Jacob van Coenhoven. So there's all kinds of linking still to be done, but there's a great deal of information in the ship journeys alone. Then last but not least, for sure, is that we have curricula intended for 4th grade, 7th grade, and 11th grade students. For example, this is a 7th grade curricula on the question of justice and slavery. And you can see if you click on this user tag justice, you will find all of the entries that are related to this particular curricula. And they include these slaves, a bunch of the Van Leer manuscripts that are tagged because they talk about this. The question of the status, what does it mean to be half free or half enslaved or half citizens as opposed to being fully free? What does it mean to be indentured? What does it mean to be a Schepen? And then there are all kinds of people who are associated with it also. And physical locations like the church, the fort, and the gallows. So if we see the fort, you'll see that there's a description of the property, and I can again open the timeline and learn everything about it. So we're in the process of creating as many links as possible between the different kinds of information, so that should you, for whatever reason, search all content on Fort Amsterdam, well, this won't be quite the best search. Let's try this way. You'll always be able to see how many entries came in and what related to them. So here's a lovely drawing and description of the fort. I encourage all of you to use the site for research and to feel free to email me with suggestions for changes or improvements, or if you notice that we've made a mistake there, oh my goodness, please do let me know. And please know that it's most certainly would not have been made with any malintent. It's a lot of information to take in. Each one of the grants that we get, we use to bring in another document collection. So if I look at the document collections here, you'll see that we have begun bringing in document collections, but we have many, many, many more to bring in. You may ask, well, why don't you just link across to them? Well, we do that also. And I'll show you what I mean by that. However, we found that if we simply had links to the documents instead of importing them wholesale, those links would often go dead. So we brought in the images themselves, along with Charlie Gearing's amazing and wonderful translations, and began to classify them regarding their locations, their property types, the people that they related to, and so forth. But we still remain with a link to the New Netherlands Institute's finding aid, and also to that specific document in the New Netherlands Institute's website, along with the box, volume, and item number that this document exists in physically. This is actually, in a certain way, a pretty awesome backup for the New Netherlands Institute should anything ever go wrong there. So it's kind of a great thing that we're doing this in addition to the work that they're doing. And they have been awesome and wonderful in helping us to work with that collection, which has been so exciting. So please do take a look around, learn whatever you can. If there's something that you don't find or wish you found, please do get in touch with me. At the end of the seminar, you will see a contact information, the info@newamsterdamhistorycenter.org. I answer that email. Please be patient and recognize that I'm a volunteer and there's only one of me. I may take a day or two to get back to you, but I do get back to people with their questions. Mary Ray, if it's all right with you, I think we'll begin to answer questions. If you can put up some of the questions for me. There we go. Okay. What is my background and how did I get interested in this project? What a nice question. So I have a company called Hudson Archival. I had been scanning rare documents for libraries and museums for many years. And I met Courtney Half, who was starting the New Amsterdam History Center. And he asked me to scan some documents relating to the Dutch period. And I don't know, I got bitten by the bug. The next thing I knew, I was reading Russell Shorto's book and I just couldn't get enough. I was fascinated. And he was wanting to start this virtual New Amsterdam History Center project that was a 3D model. And I kind of said to him, well, you know, a 3D model is cool, but you know, after you've walked around those little streets, it's what else is there to do? It's the information, it's the people that make it super fascinating, or at least it was for me. And he was really patient and said, okay, Toya, go for it. And we started the very first little database of tax lots and things like that to help explain what was in the Castello plan. And then it just, I just continued. I kind of couldn't let it go. To be fair, in my work, I've worked with many, 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 many wonderful collections, and they didn't somehow engage me the way the Dutch period does. I just am fascinated by the way that the Dutch colony evolved. And, you know, what can I say? It happens. We all end up volunteering for something. The next question says, is there any discussion to map Fort Orange in Albany? Well, yes, absolutely. We right now have an application in to a wonderful granting agency that is interested in helping us, hopefully keeping our fingers crossed, map out to the end of Long Island. And then after that, I would like to go north through Harlem and up the Hudson River Valley. Our goal in the long run is to map all of New Netherland, New Jersey, parts of Connecticut, the whole original New Netherland would be part of this project if we're lucky enough to achieve the funding and if I survive it. So yes, Fort Orange would be wonderful. I'm so happy that so many of you were part of this project early on. I'm not supposed to list who they are, but I know some of you at the very beginning were aware that it was just a dream. And for many years, it seemed like it might remain just that, but thankfully people, especially thanks to you guys, it's the society's funding is what really pushed it over the edge and allowed me to move forward. Once you guys gave us that first grant and we were able to implement the maps themselves, that's when other funding agencies started paying attention. So it was really the society's impetus that helped us move forward. Thank you for all the lovely comments. We still have time, so I can go into a little bit more detail while I'm here. I kind of was doing a very fast presentation because I wasn't sure how much time would be necessary. So one of these questions, what about the Long Island section of Maspeth? Well, Long Island as a physical mass is what is being proposed as our next piece. So it will include Brooklyn, it will include Queens, and it will go all the way out to you know, the little islands at the very end and Montauk and all of that. And that one actually will be very interesting too, because there are a lot of additional Indian tribes involved all the way out there. Someone says that they're a direct descendant of Jacques Cortelyou, who drew the Castello plan. Well, isn't that exciting? So wonderful, wonderful. I actually have a very beginning entry for him that just started earlier on today. So I need to add more information about him. Your question about Brooklyn. Oh, you spent some time on the site a few days ago and got lost. I'm so sorry to hear that. Please don't hesitate to get in touch. I'm happy to even set up a Zoom with people here and there individually as needed if they're doing deep research and really need help. I do want to help. We are absolutely hoping to move out through Brooklyn. Absolutely. There's tons of wonderful information about it. And Queens and so on out through the island. And then from there, we would go north through Harlem, the Bronx, and up through the Hudson Valley. And then eventually also to New Jersey and Connecticut. Part of that will have to do with when we receive funding for each of those sections and how long it takes to do each part. Our programmer Nitin is a wonderful guy, but between Nitin and myself right now, we're only two. We may add in some other people to help us because I know there's so much information to bring in. And I will be happy to get in touch with you about the other areas. And thank you so much for volunteering to help out those of you who have in the question and answer section. That's so nice of you. So I can go back through a little bit of this if that's helpful. We have extra time. I thought this view with the Dutch grant lots would be particularly useful in Brooklyn. And one of the questions here is, do you have maps sufficient for Long Island? Well, we will find them for sure. They will not, just as we have here with the Castello plan, we will layer them on top of one another, and they will probably be from a variety of eras in order to try to account for that. We've already identified 6 or 8 maps, none of which cover the whole of the island. And of course, will have to be sort of on, geolocated appropriately. It's kind of an interesting challenge. Yeah, the New Amsterdam History Center is presenting a program on November 9th about the Dutch in early Brooklyn, and Anthony Van Sully is one of the topics. Yes, I'd be happy to show you more about him in the timeline for sure. He's such a fun character. So here he is. And if I open his timeline, I can see that we have at least 40 results about him. You can see his, this is the birth date of his wife, and here's his birth date. So she was 5 years older than him. That's the first thing that you notice about him. He married an older woman, which is kind of unusual in that time. And here's their marriage in 1629. I can pop into that. And it happened in Amsterdam before they came here. And if I go down here, I can see a little bit about him. And if I open the timeline, I can definitely pop in and see some court proceedings. And here's one where Everardus Bogardus versus Anthony Van Sully, slander. So, there's some pretty exciting and juicy stuff in here. And thanks to Charlie's wonderful translations, you can actually read about his wife lifting her petticoats for the oncoming ships, which is quite a slanderous remark. And it's quite interesting. So one of the questions that has just come up is, are we also going to map Staten Island? Absolutely. Yes, we would love to. We would love to. That may or may not be possible as part of the Long Island project that is upcoming. We'll see. It may be its own thing. But to go back to Anthony Van Sully, just like any other ancestor that you might wish to look for, finding out about their lives and what they did and who they were married to and is one thing, but those court cases tell you a great deal about what they were probably, what they might have been like, and what it might have been like to live with the Dutch West India Company and the rules that they were all trying to live with. So we're going to look a little bit here now at Manuel. So Manuel de Gerrit de Reus was a slave, and he's been there's been a lot of biographical work on this man. You can see that that there were 9 slaves involved in a trial because Jan Primero was murdered 8 of them, including Giant Manuel, made a group confession to the murder. So essentially they said, you know, all of us did it. You have to hang us all. And ultimately they were tried, and they kind of drew straws, and Giant Manuel was the man who was planned to hang. But what's really fascinating is that despite the fact that they put 2 ropes around his neck because he was so big, when they went to hang him, the ropes, quote, broke. Probably an impossibility in terms of physics. Someone must have made sure that they would, because they didn't really want to hang him. He was probably well beloved. And whatever the reasons for that, everyone decided it was sort of an act of God. He had in fact been hanged. He had in fact survived. And he was one of quite a number of slaves who were eventually freed and given property, which is really interesting. So there's a book here that provides a map of the lands that were eventually granted to the slaves, and you can click in and actually purchase the book from the site and write back into it. Here's more information about Manuel from the New York Historical Society. They have a very detailed biography of him, and also of Dorothy Creole, who married Paulo de Angola. She's also in our database. So the encyclopedia provides you with a way of looking at the lives of enslaved people and those who were freed, the lives of men and women in the colony, and gives them both color and fun and also context for that time. You know, you'll see people suing one another over things like allowing a pig into someone's wheat field, or in revenge, because justice wasn't served, loosing the dogs in the pig pen or something. You know, there's all kinds of strange things have gone on. People burn down one another's houses. It's quite dramatic. So I encourage you to spend some time reading and enjoying what is clearly your own heritage. All those people who lived in those little houses at the very bottom tip of Manhattan must have been awfully cold and had to work awfully hard to make a life there and to turn New York into what it eventually became. You'll also find the Flushing Remonstrance is part of the collection at this point, thanks to Ken Chase and his wonderful grant. And that is really the basis of the American ideas about freedom, and freedom of religion, and freedom to worship as you please and to do business as you please. And it's right here, ready for everyone to enjoy, despite the fire that it survived. So, and there is this quite wonderful translation from Charlie available to it, and you can learn all about it. So are there any further questions that I can answer before I turn it back over to Mary Ray? Or I'm hopeful that many of you will join the New Amsterdam History Center's presentations, as well as the Daughters of Holland Dames presentations on the subject. It's quite inspiring to know how New York was founded and how your people really founded this idea of freedom hundreds of years before the Declaration of Independence. I think that's part of what made me so interested in it, and why I'm so interested in continuing the project. So with all that said, I'm going to say thank you. I remain deeply grateful to all of you for the funding that has allowed this project to continue. And thank you, Mary Ray.
Thank you, Toya. We'd like to mention that we have our records of all our applications. You're archiving them for the Holland Dames and protecting them and helping us to preserve these archives. So we appreciate that. Your company, Hudson Archival. So thank you for that. And also thank you today for your fascinating and detailed presentation. We appreciate your time with us today. And we'd like to thank everyone also that is with us today for joining our webinar. And we hope that you will please join us again in the future for our next Holland Dames presentation. Thank you again for being with us today. Toya, thank you, Suzanne, and everyone. We appreciate your being with us. Thank you very much.